Good evening, sir.
वेट कर लेते हैं, आ रहे होंगे।
Hey guys.
Hi, sir.
Hey man. Good to see everyone.
Hello.
Hey. I'll just for you. Okay. Okay, I'll just share my screen.
Yeah, just test if the screen sharing is working for me.
The what?
The screen sharing.
Yeah, I'll just moment. Which mostly revolves around Kubernetes monitoring mostly. I am therefore also a part of SIG Instrumentation in upstream Kubernetes. But before I kind of proceed with this slideshow, I wanted to take a moment and congratulate OSDC to kind of uh, bring about this whole hackathon and all these sessions on their own because not everyone knows the odds that were stacked against them. So just being the fact that I'm speaking to the audience right now means that they achieved for what they set out for. So thank you. Makes me really proud to be a part of OSDC and see that the society is still thriving. But yeah, back to the presentation. So this is going to be less of a tech talk. It's going to be more of a consultation. And I expect folks to, once, I'm done with the talk to just, we can have a one-on-one, not a one-on-one, but one with the audience, where you can just throw questions at me, things that, didn't that weren't clarified from the slideshow itself. Any doubts, any uncertainties, stuff like that. Um, Also, uh, yeah, this would be, the goal for the audience, I think, for this presentation is to just have not the strongest, but even a faint idea of how CNCF would be helpful to you should you, choose to pursue a path in this whole upstream set of critical open source software that comes under not even CNCF, but the Linux Foundation, which is this whole superset of organizations which CNCF is a part of. So yeah, we'll go over that. And Also, just before I start, just to grab a bit of audience attention, this is not going to be limited to people who just think that, okay, I'm going to do something in Golang for my career, for the rest of my career, or something in Kubernetes. That's really a myth. It doesn't matter. It's all language agnostic. So whatever you set out to do, there's something to contribute and make your career um, in CNCF in that language. We'll talk about this in more detail as I go over the slides, but this is just purely a myth that I wanted to point out that none of this is restricted to someone who just does Golang or someone who just, is involved into Kubernetes itself. This is much more bigger than that. So it doesn't really matter which, language you're coming from. So yeah, we'll talk about what CNCF is a bit, and then what the ecosystem looks like, and then I will probably not go over the certifications. That's something that you could explore if you want to. It's not necessary for you to have a certificate from CNCF. The CKA and the CCAT exams that they take. I never took them. But if of course, it could give you a boost and something nice on your resume if you are looking for something that's more, straightforward and quick to just get on your resume before you graduate. So yeah, that's that. And then we'll talk about a bit more on in the in-person gatherings and how that could help you in your journey towards contributing and connecting with these communities. Yeah, and then we will just see this landscape of the end user community and the companies that kind of thrive as well as depend on CNCF. So yeah, you'll most likely find people working from those companies in these projects as you contribute. So yeah, the first thing is, what is CNCF? What the hell is it, right? So CNCF is this envelope of critical open source software. Let me just save the slides. Okay, it's working. Yeah, so it's this envelope that entails critical open source software, and you'll find a lot, things from every single domain within either CNCF or the Linux Foundation itself. So if it's not something cloud related, it will definitely be under the Linux Foundation. And you can obviously enroll for the Linux Foundation membership, not the membership, the mentorship, sorry, where you could, work as a mentee under someone who'll guide you. And then you can, in the long term, just keep contributing to that particular project. So what I'm talking about is basically CNCF being a part of the Linux Foundation, and you can see all these domains there. It could be security that you're interested in, it could be networking, it could be cloud, which is what we are talking about today mostly. But it doesn't have to be cloud. It could be automotive as well, blockchain if you work with Solana and stuff, or of course what we all know and love, the web. So if you're someone working on Node.js or JavaScript is your thing, or even Python, there's a lot of market in the web right now. So yeah, as a Linux Foundation mentee, you could work under a mentor to get started in a project so that you obviously you could be someone who just um, starts contributing to a project without any guidance and just you read the code and then you just start fixing things. That's also a way. But if you need someone, if you think that it would be more worthy of your time to basically have someone guide you throughout that process and just have this onboarding thing going for you where you can get some help and then you are on your way. So you can do that as well. You can reach out to the Slack basically for the community that you're interested in, and that would be your starting point. So there's all these plethora of avenues that the Linux Foundation offers to get involved in large scale industrial open source softwares. And yeah, no matter where your interests lie. So please check these out. OpenJS, Hyperledger, all these have their own GitHub organizations, and there's a multitude of projects under them. So yeah, you can explore these. Yeah, so coming back to CNCF, we're going to talk about three different types of projects that you will find when you start looking into CNCF and how does that benefit you. So the most robust and stable projects will be graduated ones, one of which is Kubernetes, which you already know. Um, but someone could obviously look at this or this or this or this. Yeah. And they could just be like, wait, this is all Go-based projects. Like you said that this was language agnostic stuff. So why are we just looking at, Go-based projects? So at a very I would say transient glance, these do seem Golang based projects, but all of these, if most of these, if not all of them, have their own clients, and these clients actually need. It's not something that they want that they basically do for housekeeping and stuff, but they really want to have their clients implemented in different languages. So there's actually a need in the ecosystem for developers that are not writing in Golang, but literally any other language that has a fairly well open source backing and adoption to have their clients written in those languages so that people downstream could use them in projects that are not Go based. So there's really no shortage of this is a really nice way to be to get into a community where because this is not something that has any standards per se. You just need to implement stuff, but there's everything is more or less there to be implemented from scratch. So you can just have this entire learning experience and you can be the maintainer as well as the owner as well as the founder of these libraries. So yeah, we do have clients. You can obviously take a look and for your reference, but we don't have them to the extent where we want to be with these libraries. So there's always a need. So for example, there's a need for Ruby support in Prometheus, which has been there for the longest time. But there's people who have, I think, recently started working on creating this library, but there's a whole working group, and it's really easy to be involved in that if you know Ruby. Everything else, the spec, and if the implementation is close to the Prometheus model and stuff like that, that's all governed by the reviewers upstream. But yeah, everything that basically matters is that you know Ruby to implement that. So yeah, again, this is all language agnostic, as I said. Maybe after the presentation, I can show you an example, but yeah, it applies to all these projects. I think open telemetry more than most. Uh, but yeah, so coming back to graduated projects themselves are the most robust, GA'd, and stable projects. Um, only uh, these are just one level above the incubating ones, which are on their way to be graduated, but they just haven't met that much of a community adoption as of now. So these are also, so basically the earlier that you get into a project, is it's going to be more easier for you to navigate through it, because once a project goes GA, a lot of community members, a lot of companies as well have these paid contributors that maintain those projects, and it gets really difficult as a freelance contributor to make a space there, unless it's not, coming into LFX or Outreach or GSOC and stuff. So the earlier you get into a project, the easier it's for you to kind of own things, different things in the project, and it makes more sense. So yeah, incubating projects, it's more easier to get into them than the graduated ones. And the same thing applies to sandbox project. But sandbox projects, this does come with a trade-off, right? So these are very early, so nobody knows to which extent are they going to go, basically how feasible they are. So these could get cut off at the incubating stage, or they might never even make it to incubating stage. So that's something that you need to kind of think about when you are picking up a sandbox project and just being there from day one. But it's fairly obvious that which projects are going to make it. Some of them obviously get cut out, but it's not really, for example, Percy's. So you can see Percy's in the third last row, sorry, fourth last row in the end. And what Percy's does, for example, is it, it ha- it's basically turning down this Grafana monopoly on dashboards as code. So Percy's is basically an open source alternative to Grafana dashboards. And as a new contributor, if you see that, that should make it very obvious that this is going to be something that's going to be there in incubating, in sandbox, in graduated as well for years to come. And this has already has so much adoption as of now. So all these factors could help you determine where to begin, what language to learn, if you don't already have one. Yeah, and then the best thing that comes out of this is, once you have you contribute to a community, that could also help shape up your resume, and then that could be the same thing that you contribute to once you are placed, because you are being placed by that, right? So the hiring is being done, the shortlisting is being done because you contribute to that project. So when you go to the company, you start working, you work on the same thing basically. So yeah, it's this, you never have to leave your project. You still get engaged with the community for as long as you want, right? And that's a pretty cool thing. I'll give an example in the following slides. Sorry, I just need to drink some water. So yeah, that feels better. Okay, so this is there's this chasm chart that you're seeing right now. This also somewhat helps in estimating where the project is for different, it helps it for different personas basically. So you could be a manager at a company, and someone comes up to you and tells you that there's this cool new thing that's gaining a lot of OS traction, and we want to adopt this. So what do you basically look at when adopting something? Or you could be, not a high school, but yeah, a university student, and you would want to, pick up a project that you want to contribute and stick with for the long term. So what do you look at, right? So beginning with the sandbox projects, there's two different types of audiences that kind of get engaged with these. So there's the techies, the day one contributors who really believe in this, or the early adopters. These could be, the day one startups, the ones that are first to market, just to gain that edge that, okay, we were the first ones to market with this particular product. So it could be open element through all this. So it could be open telemetry, right? So for example, with open telemetry, there were a lot of companies that adopted it early because they were confident that this is going to be something that we can build a business around, and it affects everything on a major scale, everything within observability and monitoring. And then, of course, there's the chasm where most projects die out. This is basically the jump from incubating, from sandbox to incubating. And most projects usually make this jump, but some of these projects that don't have, let's say, a lot of contributors, or the interest just dies out in the long run, or it could be any number of factors. And because of this, these projects go into something that's called a perma beta. This is the same thing that happens with Kubernetes enhancement proposals, where we write a proposal and then there's so much reviewing with it that it never really gets merged. So there's no code written to back that up ever, right? So it always, it's stuck in perma beta. It never GAs. It's alpha, and then we think, okay, we'll just do everything in beta. But in beta, we never really get those things done because everyone is hesitant on, how what's the blast radius for this basically, and people just, don't want to review that. So it goes into perma beta automatically. There's a whole document in Kubernetes for this and how to avoid it. But yeah, once the project makes it out of the chasm, then that's the point that it starts to get eyes on it, right? It starts to get, companies, end users involved into it. By end users, I mean, Audi, Apple, Adobe, the 750 plus members or whatever, right? That depend on these. So that's when their radar start to fire. Um, so yeah, that's when the project starts to be promising, and they start to look at this as something of a building block that could be fit into their business and something that could help them run their infrastructure. So yeah, that's the early majority, the ones that adopt that at that point, because then migration at a later stage wouldn't be that much of a problem. And then there's, of course, the late majority. You could think of this as, Apple versus Android kind of thing, where, Apple is late to everything, but they kind of have an edge over it. They try to kind of smoothen things out or just add one more thing that you really, really want, something like that. So yeah, late majority um, technically does that. The conservatives implement or adopt. So with open telemetry, a lot of organizations actually adopted it because they had no other choice, because the ecosystem around them had already adopted it, so they had to adopt those APIs. Otherwise, their platform or their infrastructure would not fit with these, everything else that's around them. So they were kind of forced to do it, and that's why they fell into this late maturity kind of thing, just to make sure that even though they are late to market, they meet the customer's expectations. Because you know um, it's basically, whenever you work with open source projects, there's this thing where customers would come at you and say, okay, Datadog has this, right? Then why don't, OpenShift has this, or OpenShift has this, then why doesn't New Relic has this? And it's, mostly because of the difference in ideologies between different organizations. But um, yeah, that's probably why, there's this discrepancy. There's no one standard between different organizations. We offer different things, but if a project moves beyond the chasm and gains this much, a really high adoption, then organizations have no other choice than to adopt it. And by adopting, I mean, just going over the spec and making sure the APIs fit that spec, as was the case with OpenTelemetry. There could be also something with a fairly less amount of, risk factor to it, something like, for example, cert operator, right? Cert directory or something like that. So something that basically manages certificates out of the box. So it's never really, you can have your in-house solution for it. So you don't need to really adopt that, right? But yeah, so conservatives are the ones with the most catching up to do. Skeptics obviously just put out this edge over, shipping out this particular product the last, so they have something to kind of justify why they did that, why they were, late to adoption. So this is a tricky business where you need to figure it out at which point do you need to inject yourself basically into the this whole premise of purpose of software and the graduation. But yeah, once you have figured this out, it's going to benefit you a lot because this is something that's going to be there for your entire life. As a software engineer, as a manager, even as a contributor, you will follow this even though if you don't know it. So it's good to be just familiar with it regardless. Yeah, and members. So I already talked about this where organizations depend on this as well as thrive on this. So they contribute to it, and in doing that, they maintain the standard which is shared across different end users. And because of that, nobody has to implement things from scratch. Everyone knows, how everyone else operates within, let's say, the Kubernetes ecosystem. So because of these, I think as a side effect of these, we have these really nice gatherings, KCDs, KubeCons, where you can actually meet people from the communities that you work into, um, and you can talk to them about, going up the ladder and doing what's necessary next, essentially to, you know, become a maintainer, become a collaborator, just from being a triage member or a contributor and getting noticed fast. So, yeah, there's 750 members, 580 silver members. No, that's really relevant for us. Yeah, so CNCF is basically, yeah, it wants to make cloud computing omnipresent, should be everywhere. And that's basically what they do with their CNCG efforts. We'll also go into that in a bit. But yeah, I just wanted to get everyone's attention at the definition of CNCF's cloud native. So basically, if you look at this definition that's in bold, it goes over every single SIG. It literally goes over every single SIG. Sorry, I'm just, my mouth is a bit dry. Yeah, so it really goes over every single SIG. So for example, secure is SIG security. Resilience is SIG infra. Manageable is SIG apps or SIG auto scaling. That would help basically schedule your workloads without you knowing. So something that Kubelet does for your containers, as an example, or literally, anything in a lot of components in your Kubernetes control plane could be the controller manager that would basically reconcile your replica sets, your deployments, basically. So, but yeah, I won't go into that a lot. Yeah, sustainable. There's six sustainability now. That basically does what you would think. We have they have established these APIs where you can actually estimate the amount of carbon dioxide that your code is going to generate, which is pretty cool. So up until now, what you have, what's been taught in colleges is, there's complexities, there's, runtime complexity, there's space complexity, but there's also implementation complexity, which something you learn when I think that's not taught, but in some cases it's not. So if, for example, if you have a smaller array, it's not really very efficient to kind of use a fancy sorting algorithm. You just go over for loop or multiple for loops, and that's it, because it needs to be maintainable. So sometimes you trade off those complexities for maintenance complexities. Um, of course, you'll see a lot more of this once you go out and contribute into these projects. Um, but there's a fourth complexity now, which is how much pollution basically your code costs. So once you every single line of code could mean a huge difference between the CO2 emissions that are happening from your workload. So that's something that's really relevant with the whole AI thing that's come into picture, which is just eating up so many resources within like a very short amount of time. So people definitely need to be aware about this, and there's a whole working group. So if that interests you, please go ahead and send them a ping. Um, yeah, and then there's observable, which is something that's right down my alley, which is SIG instrumentation. Me and three other folks that basically maintain it. Of course, there's a lot more contributors within the SIG instrumentation. So we also do mentorship programs. Yeah, and if you're interested, please come by the Slack and say hi. We can definitely get you fixed somewhere. Um, yeah, so why organizations are adopting cloud native? We have already been over this, but instead of kind of reading all these points and stuff, I'm going to point out something. So organizations, we already have established that organizations depend on these technologies, these products that we already saw, that could be sandbox, incubating, or graduated. However, let's say someone starts to contribute into one of these projects based on, let's say, market trend, right? So, of course, it shouldn't be something that's fairly on a small scale. Like, for example, the certificate thing that we discussed, that doesn't make that much of a difference. But of course, if it's open telemetry, right, that's something that's rewriting the entire understanding of the ecosystem and how things should basically communicate between each other. So something that you practically base your entire monitoring stack around, that if you start to imagine if you start contributing into that, right? And then you use that experience to enrich your resume, and then you get hired because of that. And in the future, because you get hired because of that, you will still work on the same thing and you will still be in the community. So this is kind of the reward that downstream focus people, someone who's just applying to a company just because the sake of it, just to get placed or something, without with a scattered resume, or a closed source company. This is something that you won't see there, but a company with a good open source culture that essentially hires you because of what you have done earlier. You shouldn't have any um, a learning curve at all, which is the best thing ever. You can just start working on the stuff that you already worked on for so long. So this is kind of the reward that open source. This is not limited to CNCF, of course. This is the reward that open source gives you. So as something that's you know that you have been involved in day one, it could help you well into your career. I can actually show you this. So, for example, I used to contribute to Kubernetes, which is this orange dot towards the middle. And then just a bit below that is OpenShift. So, because OpenShift is Red Hat's fork of Kubernetes, I get to work on the same thing basically. So that's the benefit that you would get out of this thing. Where if you you know kind of triangulate over something that's really ecosystem um, demanding, right? That's really valued in the ecosystem. You can still work on variations of it or downstream forks of it, and it would be the same thing. You will be responsible for that, for maintaining that particular um, product downstream, exactly how you have done, before your whole, your career in your university and stuff like that. So, of course, if you are interested in Kubernetes itself, you can see that, there's a lot of popularity, and this is, I think, from last year. Um, Also, I believe that in Kubernetes itself, it's really, the whole contributor experience is really streamlined. There's actually a SIG for contributor experience, Contribix, and they hold meetings every other week, I think, including all of the SIGs. So if you don't know where you should be going into, you can join the Contribix meetings. If you do know where you should be going into, um, what you should be a part of, you can join the SIG call for that particular meeting itself. So, yeah, there's, of course, the landscape. This is constantly changing. I think this is from last year, but there's a landscape redo now. But yeah, we've already been over that. So yeah, gather with the community. This is what I was talking about. So there's the ambassadorship program, which will help you start efforts in your own locality as well, or help you connect with more people in the community. So as an ambassador, I can vouch, this is really, worth your time, even as even more as, I think, even more so as a student, because this gives you all kinds of scholarships and student discounts on these meetings, these KCDs and KubeCons, the ones at the bottom. So you don't really need to worry about just kind of how to start with these, or just being isolated during the duration of this, your contributor journey. Um, yeah, so you can obviously, if you don't want to be involved, that's fine. If you just want to be behind the screen, that was actually my case, so that's fine as well. There's mentorship programs for that. Sig Instrumentation, of course, already has a mentorship program. So if you just want something that's more virtual, you don't, really want to be in a in-person kind of setting, that's completely fine as well. There's also CNCGs, which is a city specific event. So everyone in their own city who's interested in cloud computing could start a CNCG. Technically, any city can have its own CNCG. So if you live in Delhi, or in your hometown, if it's Bangalore or something, it's most likely to already have one. So you can just look up, CNCGs on the website and just start going to it. There's no registration fee at all, whatever. So you just log in and just go there, and you can start talking to people, and, talk about their own journeys, how they moved up the ladder, stuff like that. So, um, yeah. So this is just, what happens there. I can vouch for all of these. It's completely, um, I wouldn't say life changing, but it's something that would give you the clarity, most likely, that you need to kind of just make that last step over the line, just to get, just to make sure that, okay, my career definitely lies within the cloud native community. So, yeah, um, you know, look into it, see if it interests you. Of course, we have all these SIGs. I already talked about these, the working groups. The non-code, there's also non-code stuff. You can write up blogs, write up there's SIG docs as well that you can get involved into. Um, it definitely doesn't deserve the amount of attention that it should. But without docs, there's this whole disconnect between the end users and the maintainers that kind of write these APIs. So it really makes sense to, encourage and be a part of docs if you want. it's equally as important as writing code, because without that, there's just ambiguousness. So yeah, so you can see how cloud native has evolved from all these patterns throughout really hosting thing, which kind of was taken over by open source alternatives, OpenStack, Cloud Foundry, and then the whole revolution with Docker that began. So we are at the cloud native stage right now, and we hope that this is the last part of it. And cloud native is exactly the thing that kind of pushes us over the line, and is there to stay. But it's been 10 years, so I think that is a safe bet. Um, but yeah, so it has a long history to it. You can obviously look into that if you want, and of course, joining CNCF is something that should be a couple of clicks away. There's the Slack link for CNCF Slack, or if you have any general inquiries, there's PRs and stuff if you want, or memberships if you want a CNCF membership as a CNCG in your own city and stuff. You can definitely ping them. And there's usually no bars at all the prerequisite states is you should be able to do one within 90 days, stuff like that. They already provide you with funds and stuff, so it should be easy if you're into that sort of thing. But yeah, this is pretty much everything that you would need to know for CNCF. And I hope by this slide, people do have this faint idea of how CNCF could help them. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'm all ears. Thank you for joining me. Yeah.
So do you wanna see the chats or something?
Yeah. Sorry. I
Ritika, can we screen share the charts, YouTube chats?
I'll just do. By the way, we have one
oh
question from Arvind sir, that is the Nexus Foundation under CNCF.
yeah. Um Sorry, I thought the chat was the Jitsi chat. I'll just take a look. Close this out. Can someone drop the link to the YouTube site? I'll just try finding it. Okay.
You have sent it on WhatsApp.
Yeah. Just got it. Is NixOS Foundation under CNCF? So it could be. I'm not sure, but there's no bars basically. CNCF only asks that once you're applying for whatever you're applying for, whatever your organization is, all CNCF asks is it should benefit cloud native in some way. So we already saw the motto for CNCF, which is to make cloud computing omnipresent, essentially, and it should help cloud computing or should be related to it in some manner. So yeah, if NixOS is directly related to it, it's obviously eligible to be included as a part of Linux Foundation or under CNCF, whichever makes sense. And that should be, but as of now, I don't think it's a part of it, because that's generally more of a package manager or a reproducible BIOS, right? So that maybe, of course, there's been examples of how NixOS is really useful in cloud native environments, but I'm not sure if that's like an indirect implementation, indirect argument of how I mean, it's one of those things that it could do best, right? But it's not constrained to CNCF. There's obviously people more, well versed on this stuff than me. But if NixOS should file an adoption issue in the CNCF, I think, landscape repository, they should be able to take it from there and see how it fits. So yeah, that's basically the case with every single product, every technology that goes up for adoption. So yeah.
I don't see more questions, I think. Does anyone wants to ask more questions? Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, sir, thank you for taking your time out and giving this talk. I'm sure it was pretty insightful for everyone. And thank you for supporting OSGC as always. Couldn't have done this event without the alumni. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for all the effort that you guys put into the whole event. It's I look forward to this every year, and I wasn't so sure because of the circumstances this year, but it's really nice to see you guys made it this year around as well, and I hope it goes on for many years into the future as well. So yeah, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So should I just disconnect now? Is that fine?
You can stay. Let's see if anyone wants to join the call.
Yeah, sir.
Okay.
CTM is
The CT on the call right now.
Okay. I'm here then. Sure. Just turn my camera off.